Hello and welcome back to the Blood Red channel for the second time today as we bring you the redraw live for the last 16 of this season's Champions League. Jurgen Klopp's men had been drawn with Red Bull Salzburg earlier on today, which we were all pretty pleased with, to be honest, but a UEFA error, which they are blaming on a technical problem with an external service provider, whatever that means, does mean that we have to do the entire thing all over again. Theo Squires and Mo Stewart are back alongside me. We've substituted James Martin for Ben Botchak for the second leg, and we'll bring you the redraw live very shortly, just as we did this morning. Hopefully nothing goes wrong this time. Theo, I'll come to you first. It's good in the sense of we get a bit more content out of it, but it's an absolute mess that they made of this, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was me thinking that the sporting body that would make the biggest cock up this weekend would be the FIA with the F1. But no, UEFA had to come out and outdo them. It was just weird watching it at the time. Obviously, we were watching it with the subtitles, so we didn't have the volume on. But to realise it wasn't just you put the wrong team in the wrong ball and it's the one mistake. It was, 3 errors, and Liverpool should have been or potentially drawn against Villarreal, and that United avoided getting Atletico at all. It's just like, you've done this draw so many times. Like, it's always a joke when you're explaining it because we all know how it works. You're the expert. You've done your dummy draw this morning. You check the balls and everything. How have they cocked this up? Is it just because one person has gone for the wrong ball and then no one's picked him up on it? But yeah, it was weird watching it unfold. Like we didn't quite know what was going on. Took a second to go, hang on, they've already played Villarreal. We're not just talking about the Europa League final. It was more recently than that. But yeah, hopefully it's second time lucky because we've got our Xmas due at 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, whatever it is, we're meeting up. I don't think we've got time for doing another redraw before that starts. It'll be eating into our drinking time. So hopefully UEFA get it right this time.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it might already be eating into my drinking time, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, plenty still to come across the day. That the draw is just a few minutes away, Mo. I mean, I said this before, actually. It's so complicated the way that UEFA do this draw. It's almost a miracle. Something like this has never happened before.
Well, I mean, has something like this happened before and we never knew about it? This is the thing that I'm questioning, because I do think that if it was a team other than Manchester United that got drawn wrong, then it may not necessarily have caused quite so much consternation. But you're right, it is an overly complicated draw. And I think I mentioned the first time around, they tried to keep certain teams away from each other in terms of TV matchups as well. So they do overcomplicate it themselves more than is necessary. I've seen lots of people talk about them just making it a completely open draw as they have for the quarterfinals. I kind of understand why they don't do that, but that there needs to be a middle ground between that and complete chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Complete chaos is what it's been. I mean, the advantage of having you on this stream, Ben, and not the one before, is that we can go over what we said before and say, who do you not want to face? Who do you want to face? I suppose the answer to that is probably PSG and then Red Bull Salzburg.
Yeah, it would have been the perfect draw, really. Even the fact that Man United were drawn PSG as well, that from a Liverpool perspective, you want United to get the toughest draw, and it was just the dream scenario. But I mean, in terms of, I don't think Villarreal would be too bad. Benfica, any of those teams really. Sporting as well. I think the two big ones to avoid are obviously PSG and Inter Milan, and yeah, hopefully we can avoid them again.
Yeah, and hopefully they get it right this second time. Theo, I mean, for anyone that didn't see before, I mean, there is a good few teams in there that Liverpool can face. But like we said earlier on, whoever it is, even if it was Paris Saint-Germain, for example, you'd fancy Liverpool over 2 legs to beat anyone that they're put up against.
Yeah, definitely. That's the form they're in at the moment. They are beating everyone left, right, and centre. They've got the best player in the world. They're scoring goals for fun, and they're getting clean sheets quite regularly as well. Alisson's back to his best. Virgil van Dijk's in the heart of defence. It's like when you've got the best goalkeeper in the world, the best centre back in the world, arguably the best holding midfielder in the world, and Fabinho, and the best player in the world. You're a match for anyone. And you look at PSG. I think I've said it on other podcasts. Is Mbappe going to be there for the second half of the season, or Real Madrid going to come knocking and push to get him before the end of the contract? Messi isn't the giant he once was. He still can win games, but he's just not as intimidating. Like if you're going a choice of PSG or Liverpool, surely you'd rather face PSG for the other teams they can get because Salah is more dangerous than Messi in current form. But yeah, it's been a shambolic draw, and it'd just be sod's law now, wouldn't it? You've avoided PSG, you've got the nice draw in Red Bull Salzburg. You know you can beat them, and now you're going to get the team you want to avoid. But we're going through them. There isn't much there. You should really fare. Liverpool beating PSG on the way to winning the Champions League a couple of years ago, and the squad wasn't as strong then. Really, they hadn't won anything at that point. So if they could do that, then you'd like to think they can do it again now. And then the other teams, well, we said Inter Milan are next best, but they're not as strong as they were last year when they won Serie A. And the rest, it's just, well, these are these middle names in European football. These are the teams that you expect to get knocked out in the round of 16 until you have the 8 heavyweights left for the quarterfinals, where it's all the big boys who've won all these European titles year after year. So let's hope it's a straightforward round of 16 draw. Liverpool can get through it with relative ease and then just prove their worth against the big boys in the quarterfinals. And I'm sure they'll find a way to make that as complicated as possible once again.
Yeah, some of the middle of the road teams, obviously one being Red Bull Salzburg. Villarreal is in there as well. But I'd quite fancy a trip to Portugal. Not that I'll be heading over there, but I mean, obviously Sporting and Benfica, Mo. Either of those teams are good. They play good football. They're obviously at a high level. But again, you'd fancy Liverpool to beat them over 2 legs.
I would, and considering how we normally play against Porto, how we played against Porto this season, and how Porto have played against those two teams this season with being joint top of the league, I would fancy Liverpool's chances. I would say either of them would be an enjoyable experience in terms of going away to the game and also probably a comfortable passage through. I think you could probably say the same about Villarreal as well and Salzburg. Those 4 teams in particular, they all have players who are going to be targets during the January transfer window. So they may well look different by the time we see them. So I think if that happens, they're only going to be weaker rather than stronger. So again, that plays into Liverpool's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looks like the draw is a couple of minutes delayed. It is just after 2 o'clock, I think, but it will be on its way very shortly. In terms of the transfers, Ben, I know you're a big fan of Karim Adeyemi. It would have been a nice opportunity for a few Liverpool fans to see a name like that who's been linked with Liverpool plenty of times over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and there's a fair few other players as well that could be of interest to Liverpool. We know that they like to scout there. So it would have been interesting. I do think Mo said that I'm sure you meant Adeyemi as one of the transfer targets who could be moving on in January, but the Red Bull Salzburg sporting director has been pretty adamant that he's going to stay in January. So he would have played against Liverpool in all likelihood. And I think an enticing draw like that as well will keep those targets for another 6 months as well. So, yeah, it would have been an ideal draw just to get a first-hand look at some of these players and see how they deal with the Anfield atmosphere as well. And I think as well with Salzburg, they like to play quite defensive football at the moment, counter-attacking. So it would have been a good sort of test to see how Liverpool deal with that counter-attacking opposition. Yeah, it would have been interesting, but, well, who knows? Who knows who we're going to get now?
Yeah, one of 6 teams. I mean, just in terms of Salzburg, Theo, I mean, we have seen Salzburg a couple of times over the last few years. Liverpool had them in the group stage. They played a friendly, which from memory, I think finished 2 each. I might be wrong on that one, but certainly
Brewster
they played.
Didn't they? That was a brace. Brewster
Yeah,
and Daka.
possibly, yeah.
Was it 3-2? Was it Daka scored twice?
It's been wiped from my memory. There was a fair few goals in it anyway. The 4-3.
We're filling airtime here, aren't we? We've answered all the questions about the Champions League, so we're doing it again. So now we're just talking about friendlies instead.
the point I was getting around to be fair, was it would have been probably quite an entertaining game. The fact that we've seen that in the past, there does tend to be quite a few goals between those teams. It would have been one that was set up quite nicely.
Yes and no, because I feel Liverpool are stronger than them when they've faced them before. And Salzburg, even though they've actually got through here for the first time, they're weaker. Like when you've played them before, they've had Daka, they've had the Hungarian guy who in the last 2-3 hours, I still can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try.
I can, as a Hungarian, I can help you out.
Go on, Ben, you know his name, go on.
Dominic Szoboszlai.
There we go. And that's it, I'm not going to have to say him again. Haaland, Minamino, Juan Hee-chan, they're at that high level. They're doing a bit more, but you look at them now, and it's just Adeyemi, maybe Aronson. I think we mentioned this morning as well. that they do feel like they've got that next level to reach. They've got another year in them before they perhaps are ready to move on. Whereas Liverpool have just taken it to another level, and I think we'd be giving them even more praise this season if it wasn't a 3-horse title race. Like when they won the league so convincingly, it was because they had no competition. Whereas this year, they're probably playing better. The players are in better form, but they're not running away with it because they've got Chelsea and City right up there with them. So you can't really appreciate it as much. But yeah, you wouldn't fear Salzburg because Liverpool have risen to that level and they don't have an Erling Haaland now. Like, it doesn't matter how good Adeyemi is and he's burst onto the scene. He's doing well for Germany when he's been given his chance. He isn't at Haaland's level. He might be in a few years' time, but he's not now. So they're not that as dangerous as they would have been. And it's one where I suppose Liverpool can't really focus on it because if they get a really tough draw, if they get PSG now, it's not, could have had Salzburg. It could have been an easy passage through to the quarterfinals. They've just got to take it on the chin and feel, well, if they're going to win the Champions League, they're going to have to beat these big teams at some point or another. And they are one of the best teams around. And whether they're facing one of the smaller sides or if they're facing a side with Messi and Mbappe and Neymar or Inter Milan or any of these, they've just got to get the job done. They've got to focus on themselves. It's what they're very good at doing. It's what Jurgen Klopp is always saying. It's always about how they play their game. So, we'll see what the draw brings us this time. I'm hoping they find another way to muck it up so we can do it all again. Maybe tomorrow we'll just keep dragging it out more and more.
Please don't say that.
It might get entertaining though, won't it? Oh, here we go. We're getting an apology at least. So that's something from them.
Giorgio Marchetti is here. So it does look like the draw is a couple of minutes away. One thing I did want to mention was that Barcelona are out, Mo. Presumably, UEFA haven't messed it up so much that their name will still come out of the hat. But it is a big loss for the first time in a long time.
It is in that prestige manner. But when you see that they've been drawn against Napoli in the playoff round of the Europa League, you wonder, well, they still managed to find their way to a glamour tie because I believe that was a Champions League tie. Was it last season or the season before? But yeah, for teams from England, not having Barcelona looming on the horizon is actually a fantastic thing. Obviously, for UEFA, they'd probably prefer to have them in there, but that's the point. Even if you are the best team with the best history, you still have to put the work in the group stage. The last 16 is the best 16 teams from the best European competition so far this season. So as much as Benfica might not necessarily be as hard to beat as Barcelona, they are the ones who deserve to be there.
I'll give you a nice omen whilst we're talking about Barcelona. I believe the last time they didn't make the Champions League knockout stages, last time they knocked out in the groups, that was when they faced Liverpool in the semi-finals of the UEFA Cup. Liverpool won the treble that year. So here we go, gathering cups in May. It's going to be a successful season for Liverpool.
See, that's what we all like to hear.
I'd say as well, given Barcelona's form, you probably would have wanted to fancy them as well if they would have got through anyway.
Yeah, that's
they're only 8th in La Liga and they're struggling to win games. So it would have
been anyway. No Barcelona, but Red Bull Salzburg are the first team to come out of the hat. So let's see who gets them. Will it be Liverpool? Possibly not, but we will see. It's one of 7 that they can face, obviously, at this stage of the draw. So we wait with bated breath to see who they get this time. Again, taking the time, being very careful this time to make sure they pick the right ball. Doing it a lot slower than what they were first time.
Andrei Arshavin this time.
Andrei Arshavin has stuck around, which is good to see. Thought he might have got off after the first version of it, but he is still there, which is good.
Fair play to him.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope they get it right this time.
We'll find out whether we can keep our content.
Here we go. Right. The first, or the second one, I should say, after Red Bull Salzburg to come out of the hat is Bayern Munich. So it will be a different draw for Liverpool. A much, much easier draw for Bayern. I'm sure they're pretty happy. They did have Atletico Madrid in the first version of the draw, but Red Bull Salzburg against Bayern Munich. Ben, what do you make of that tie? A good one for Adeyemi going back to a former club, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be an enticing tie to... he can get a bit of revenge against Bayern Munich, who released him when he was 10, I believe. So it's going to be a big test for him as well, coming up against such a tough defense and tough team. And we'll really see what Salzburg are made of as well, because they call it the Europa League group that they were in the Champions League. So to come up against the big side, it will be a big test.
Yeah, the first time that Salzburg have got through to the knockout stages, I believe. The first team from Austria to get through since 2001. So it's a new step for them. A big challenge as well against Bayern Munich. But
Is that another
Sporting
Liverpool
Lisbon,
treble winning season omen then?
another one, yeah. Another one, absolutely. Sporting Lisbon, the next team out of the hat. And they will play Manchester City. So a trip to Portugal for Manchester City and Pep Guardiola. That's 2 relatively easy draws for Manchester City in a row, Theo. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, it's not as though every time they've won the League Cup, they've faced like the lowest possible teams in the competition, or the FA Cup. They always seem to get these easier rounds. But it doesn't matter. It's Man City. They don't win in Europe anyway. So they can face whoever they want. They're not going to be winning it in bits and Petersburg in May.
Yeah, they'll have to face someone big at some stage in the competition, that is for sure. Benfica, the next team out of the hat. We mentioned them before. Mo, wouldn't be a bad draw for Liverpool. It's one of those that you'd probably prefer over a PSG at least.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've still got a few of the more comfortable, I think it's fair to say, names still out there. So I'm not quite concerned yet. But yeah, Benfica would be lovely. I'm sure we'd be quite happy to go over there. Nice little trip.
Yeah.
Revenge for 05-06 as well, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, absolutely. Benfica and the team that they're going to face, just coming out of the ball now, as Andre Arshvin holds it up. And it is Ajax Benfica. So not Liverpool again. It's getting a little nervy for the PSG ball coming out, I think, at this stage. But
we need to remember, probability-wise, the most likely 2 were Inter Milan and Villarreal, and they are still out there. So yeah, I don't think we need to go all PSG crazy just yet. The one I'm really interested in is Real Madrid, because they were very angry about this redraw. They wanted to keep Benfica. So if they end up with Chelsea, then they're going to be very upset.
A few seconds and it could well be the case, couldn't it?
Yeah, Chelsea out
50-50 chance. They only get Lille or Real Madrid.
I mean, we have to say as well, if Chelsea did get Real Madrid, that would be a nice little advantage for Liverpool in any Premier League title race. I'm sure that's something to
unless Liverpool get PSG, of course.
Yeah, of course. Although, yeah, that would soon balance
the
it out. The
probability thing that I read says that if Chelsea do draw Real Madrid, our chances of getting PSG does increase. I'm not sure why, but it does.
What's the probability of them messing the draw up in the first place?
Yeah, that's true.
Lille, Chelsea against Lille. So that was the same as before, wasn't it?
The only one that's the same so far. Oh, imagine that.
Yeah, again, a really, really good draw for them. Not an easy team to play against Lille, of course, but easier than what it could have been, certainly, Ben.
You get to keep the Joe Cole derby as well, so BT's very happy about that.
Atletico Madrid, the next team to come out, so obviously can't play against Liverpool. I'm sure UEFA need reminding that. So someone has told them that.
Be Man United, obviously. Clearly, this has to be Man United.
Manchester United or Juventus, I believe, are the 2 that they can get. So it's a 50-50 again. But either way, that'd be a really good draw. Certainly from a neutral perspective to watch those games.
That wasn't very good spinning of the balls, though, was it? Just drops one. I'm not sure.
At least they got the right balls in there this time.
It's Manchester United. Manchester United. I'm sure that'll be one to watch, Ben, a decent tie to look at there.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that's still a tough tie for United. I think Atletico have been hit and miss this season, but I'd still fancy them to get one over United.
Villarreal, the next team to come out. That's one that Liverpool would fancy.
It's the only fanciable one left, isn't it?
In fact, yeah.
So if it's not this, it's a big one.
Oh, I think they can only get Juventus. So
they can only get Juventus. I'm not entirely sure why, but they can only get Juventus. I'm sure there is a lot of reason behind that.
It's either Real Madrid PSG or Liverpool PSG.
So PSG aren't happy, basically.
I mean, they were never going to get a good draw in this anyway.
And it's Juventus that come out of the hat. So Juventus, the next ones. Big draw, possibly awaiting Liverpool, Mo.
That means it's done. We've got Inter Milan. No. Yeah, we've got Inter Milan because Real Madrid can't face Inter Milan. They're in the same group.
There we go.
An excellent point. An excellent point.
Fantastic.
Slight
Back to
bad
San
goals,
Siro
but-
we go.
Yeah, I mean, we said at the beginning that like Inter were in the group of less comfortable, but I would consider them. They are in a group between PSG and the rest in terms of quality. But I think we go there with no fear. Again, I think Inter Milan probably aren't happy with that. They'd probably rather play Ajax than play against Liverpool. But we've got very, very recent great memories of that stadium. I think that it's one we can look forward to. They're a classic European team. We've had some battles in the past. So, yeah, I'm happy with that.
Our work chat is just thinking that they've made another mistake. They're thinking that why couldn't Liverpool face Villarreal? So we might have to do round 3 if there isn't a valid reason why Liverpool can't face Villarreal. Like there
I've
is no
absolutely
reason.
no idea at this point. For now, provisionally, Theo, it's Liverpool against Inter. A big tie in terms of the names involved, but Liverpool will be favourites for that.
Yeah, they will. I was in Italy last week and I did see Inter Milan against Roma. They won that game 3-0. They have got some good players. They're playing some good stuff, but they've lost some good players as well. Like they lost Lukaku. Italian football is not what it was in, I'd say, 15 years ago. When Liverpool won in Istanbul, Italian football in that era before Messi and Ronaldo was the best around. When you could list AC Milan, Inter Milan, Juventus, it's like they've got 11 world-class players. Now it doesn't, and Liverpool shouldn't fear Inter Milan. It's one where you'd be more excited for it if they hadn't just played AC Milan in the group stages, because it's a bit more exciting going to that San Siro before they knock it down. But they're only there last week, and now they're going to have to go there again in a few weeks' time. But they've had some interesting ties against them in the past that we won't remember. We're all far too young to remember the controversial one in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
But Liverpool did get a nice win against them under Benitez in, was it 2007, 2008?
Yeah,
So,
Torres scored the goal in
So
San Siro.
if this draw stands, it could have been a lot worse.
I just worked out why it can stand.
Okay, go on,
It's
interrupt,
because-
explain.
It's because the last 2 teams were Inter. So Real Madrid couldn't play Villarreal because they obviously they're in the same team. They're both Spanish, and then Inter and Juventus for the other two teams that could have been drawn against each other. So Liverpool couldn't be in that draw because then that would have meant either Real Madrid or Villarreal or Inter and Juventus would have had to play each other, I think.
Right.
Yeah, that does
Chloe's
sound.
face here.
that
He's
does
so
sound about
confused, isn't he?
Oh, bless him.
right.
Something else as well about playing Inter Milan, something I flagged up in the piece that I wrote on Monday. All you go out there and check it out. Inter have got some tough games in February. They play a Milan derby on the 6th, and then they're away at Napoli on the 13th. So the Liverpool game's either going to be after one of those 2 games. So it's going to be a tough ask for them.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah, the other game, Real Madrid, PSG, that's a big one, isn't it, as well, Mo? It seems the draw has maybe not been kind to Real Madrid on that case.
I know, and the fact that the Real Madrid made such a fuss about it, and the fact that obviously Real Madrid are the team that everybody feels sorry for all the time, makes it even funnier. I think it's going to be really interesting because you also have, as Theo mentioned before, the Mbappe thing that we can just drop in there. We haven't got a Messi Ronaldo anymore, but we've got a Mbappe Willy won't he, which we're going to have to deal with for the next 2 to 3 months. So that's going to be exciting. That's going to be very interesting. And Real Madrid at the moment are in lots. They're in a really good running form. I believe it's 10 wins in a row. So the Real Madrid of December would beat the PSG of December. But when it gets to February, who knows?
Yeah, well, as we said, or as Ben said a couple of minutes ago, the reason that Villarreal couldn't be drawn out against Liverpool is because the other options, they couldn't play against those. So it is complicated, but we think they have got it right this time. I'll come to you for the final word in just a second, Theo, but I'll read out the draw in full for anyone that has missed it up to this point. Salzburg, who Liverpool thought this morning they were going to play, are actually going to play against Bayern Munich. Sporting against Manchester City, Benfica against Ajax, Chelsea against Lille, which is the same as what it was first time around, Atletico Madrid against Manchester United, Villarreal against Juventus, Inter against Liverpool, and finally PSG against Real Madrid. Obviously, that last one is a big tie, Theo, but the one that we're focused on is Inter against Liverpool. Just as a final point, really, it's one that Liverpool will really fancy themselves in, and it's also one to look forward to.
Yeah, it's got that similar feel of the group stages where you're facing the name, but it's not as dangerous as it once was. Like Liverpool should still feel confident going to Milan and being able to knock out Inter Milan. I've just got the squad up here, and they've got Martinez, and you look at the rest of the squad, and it's not as dangerous as it could be. You'd expect them to have more elite players. Like I was saying before, it's just the state Italian football's in at the moment. PSG would have been a harder tie, and while Inter Milan are probably the next biggest name there, Liverpool should have more than enough to beat them. And it's just one where I suppose it's going to get you a little bit excited going to the San Siro. It's all the history around it, but they've just done the San Siro. They can be happier with it than Real Madrid will be. Like Real Madrid should probably be fuming, because I think I read before they said if you're going to do a redraw, start it after ours. Ours was fine, and what if they ended up and getting the toughest one in there? United, I suppose they can be slightly happier. Atletico is a little bit easier for them, and we don't know what Simeone's side is going to turn up. And Luis Suarez against them, that could be interesting, couldn't it? He could make a few Liverpool fans quite happy there. It makes it harder for Liverpool to progress, and it's not as case of as many big teams are going to fall at this round now. But you've got to beat these names to get through to the quarterfinals, to get through to the semi-finals, to get through to the final. And Inter Milan are a name, but they're just not the giant they were. If Liverpool had been in Serie A last season, ignoring all the injuries and that, in a normal season, if Liverpool were in Serie A, they would win it comfortably. I think we can say that quite safely and calmly at the moment. They are just one of the best teams around. Mohamed Salah gets to go back to Italy again, leave another blow as he carries on his fine Champions League scoring form this season. As it stands, you'd be quite confident with Liverpool progressing, but they will give us more of a test than you'd imagine Salzburg would have done.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that just about brings us to the end of the draw. Second time lucky for UEFA. Bring on your Internazionale for Liverpool. As mentioned earlier on, the first leg will be away from home. The second leg at Anfield. That remains the case because the Reds won their group, and so that is their reward. The first leg ties the 15th and 16th, or the 22nd and 23rd of February. The second legs on the 8th and 9th, or 15th and 16th of March. We should know in a few hours' time, hopefully, I know I did say that a few hours ago, which way round those ties will be. So we will bring you that, of course, across theecho.com and everywhere else as soon as we know it. For now, though, from myself, Matt Addison, Theo Squires, Mo Stewart and Ben Botchak, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully, that is the final Champions League last 16 draw. We don't have to do this again.